The restaurant buzzed with gentle chatter, the clinking of wine glasses, and laughter that echoed off the walls lined with soft amber lights. Every table seemed alive, every seat taken, except one. At the far corner, near a rain-streaked window, sat a woman named Amelia Rhodes, wearing a navy dress she had ironed twice, her curls pinned perfectly, her smile rehearsed too many times in the mirror. This was supposed to be her fresh start, her first blind date after 2 long years of heartbreak and healing. But as the clock ticked past 30 minutes, the seat across from her remained empty. The waiter had refilled her water 3 times. The candle on her table had melted halfway down. She checked her phone, no call, no message, just that quiet, suffocating silence of disappointment. A few people glanced her way. A couple smirked, another whispered. Amelia pretended not to notice, but her chest burned. That familiar ache of rejection crept up, whispering cruel things she thought she'd silenced long ago. She stood to leave, forcing a small smile at the waiter, when the restaurant doors suddenly swung open. 2 little twin girls, no older than 6, stepped inside. Their matching yellow coats were slightly too big, their hair tied in messy pigtails, and their eyes, large, dark, and searching, scanned the room. Then they saw her. One whispered to the other, and they walked straight toward Amelia, holding hands tightly. "Excuse me, ma'am," the braver one said, voice trembling but polite. "Our daddy said to tell you he's sorry he's late." The restaurant went silent. The laughter, the chatter, it all faded. Amelia froze, staring at the girls, her heart pounding as a candle flickered between them. She didn't know it yet, but that moment, that single sentence, would change her entire life. The girls climbed into the booth without waiting for permission, sliding onto the seat across from her. Their little feet dangled above the floor, swinging nervously. The braver twin, who introduced herself as Maya, handed Amelia a folded napkin. Inside, written in hurried pen, were the words, "Traffic accident on Jefferson. Please wait for me. D." Amelia's mind raced. The name on the dating app had been David. She remembered his profile, a single father, software engineer, widowed, 35. His smile in the photo had been gentle, but he hadn't mentioned twins. "Are you girls okay?" she finally asked softly. They nodded, but as Amelia looked closer, she noticed faint scuff marks on their shoes and how their fingers were red from the cold. They must have been waiting outside for him. The waiter approached, but Amelia waved him off, ordering 2 cups of hot chocolate instead. The girl's eyes lit up with gratitude. As they sipped slowly, she learned bits and pieces of their story. Their dad had told them they were meeting a nice lady. He'd left them in the car for a moment to grab flowers, but he never came back. A siren had wailed somewhere down the street not long after. Amelia's chest tightened. The words "traffic accident" echoed in her mind. Minutes turned into an hour. Still no sign of him. Finally, she asked the waiter to call the nearby hospital. When she reached Jefferson Memorial, her stomach twisted. The nurse confirmed it. A man matching David's description had been brought in. Car hit by a drunk driver. Stable but unconscious. Amelia turned back to see the twins, now holding each other's hands, their small faces pale under the fluorescent lights. They looked lost, alone, that night. As she sat in the hospital hallway beside 2 little girls she'd met only hours ago, she realized something strange. She didn't feel like she was doing a favor. It felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The next morning, when David finally opened his eyes, his first words were slurred but clear. "Are my girls okay?" They were, because a woman he'd never met, a stranger meant to be his blind date, had refused to walk away. Days turned into weeks. David recovered slowly, but his injuries left him temporarily unable to walk without assistance. Amelia visited often, at first out of concern for the twins. But soon, something deeper grew. Maya and her sister Lena began to wait for her visits, like they were counting down to Christmas. They'd greet her with little handmade cards, or stories about school, their laughter echoing down sterile hospital halls. But outside those walls, not everyone was as kind. Amelia noticed the subtle stares from nurses when she, a light-skinned woman, walked and holding the hands of 2 black children. She overheard a whisper once, probably a social worker, and another time, maybe they're not hers. At the grocery store, when she took the twins shopping while David recovered, one cashier had the nerve to ask, "Are you their nanny?" Amelia's cheeks burned. She smiled politely, but inside, anger boiled. She wasn't their mother, not yet, but she loved them more than she expected she ever could. David, once home, apologized endlessly. He hadn't planned to involve her in his chaos. But Amelia saw something in him. Resilience, quiet dignity, an exhaustion that only single parents know. One evening, as she dropped off groceries at his place, she saw the reality of his struggle. Bills stacked on the counter, dishes in the sink, twin shoes scattered near the door. It wasn't neglect. It was survival. He worked nights remotely, barely sleeping, trying to rebuild after the accident. The system hadn't been kind to him either. His insurance delays, constant suspicion from landlords, and how a police officer had once followed him home just to check his address. Amelia saw it all. It broke her, because David wasn't a lazy man. He was a devoted father fighting a world that judged him by the color of his skin before hearing a word he said. The more she saw, the more she understood. She started helping quietly, meal prepping, picking up the twins from school, reading bedtime stories when David was too exhausted to stay awake. And yet, whispers grew louder. Neighbors asked questions. Some looked at her differently, as if wondering why a white woman was spending so much time in a black man's home. Amelia ignored them, but the weight of judgment pressed on her shoulders, reminding her how racism wasn't always loud. Sometimes it hid in glances and polite smiles. Still, in that small apartment filled with laughter, she found something sacred. Belonging. One gray afternoon, everything changed. Amelia picked up the twins from school, but as they were about to cross the street near their home, a police cruiser pulled over. A white officer stepped out, hand resting on his holster. "Ma'am," he said coldly, "we received a call. Someone reported 2 children being taken by a stranger." Amelia's blood ran cold. Before she could speak, the officer leaned down to the girls. "Do you know this woman?" The twins froze, terrified. Within seconds, David came rushing from down the street, limping, shouting their names. Another officer blocked him, barking orders for him to stay back. Amelia tried to explain, but her words bounced off stone faces. Identification, they demanded. Proof you're authorized to be with them. Her hands trembled as she fumbled through her bag. The twins began to cry. And in that chaos, flashing lights, shouting tears, Amelia saw it clearly. How easily love could be mistaken for suspicion when color was involved. David's voice cracked. "Those are my daughters," he yelled. But the officer didn't lower his hand until a neighbor stepped out to confirm his identity. The scene ended as quickly as it began, but something inside Amelia broke. That night, she couldn't sleep. She replayed the fear in Maya's eyes, the humiliation on David's face, and she realized this wasn't just a bad misunderstanding. It was a reflection of a truth she could no longer ignore. Being black in America meant being questioned for existing. And she had the privilege of walking away unscathed. But she didn't want to walk away. Not anymore. Weeks passed. Slowly, the trauma faded. David apologized again and again for dragging her into his world of constant explanations. But Amelia just shook her head. "This is our world now," she said quietly. Because somewhere between that empty restaurant and that police stop, their lives had intertwined beyond logic. They began to heal together. Amelia helped David start a community blog, The Late Table, where he wrote about parenthood, racial bias, and the power of empathy. It went viral. People began sharing their own stories. The same restaurant where they first met invited them back months later, not for a date, but for an interview. David arrived holding both girls' hands. Amelia sat beside them. The table now full, laughter replacing silence. When the owner asked what message they wanted to share, David said, "Sometimes life makes you late, but the right people will wait for you anyway." The audience clapped. But for Amelia, the real applause was in Maya's smile, in the warmth of family that needed no blood relation, only heart. Over time, They became a symbol of something bigger, a reminder that love doesn't erase racism, but it can stand against it, that empathy can rewrite stories that prejudice once controlled, and that sometimes the most important tables we sit at are the ones we weren't even supposed to be invited to. When the video of their story went viral, thousands of comments poured in from single parents, interracial families, and strangers moved to tears. And that once lonely woman who'd sat waiting at an empty table now found her seat filled, not just with love, but with purpose.